There are games you only realize you are playing once it is too late to win. Have you ever felt that way? An argument that never ends. A job you thought was just temporary, only to wake up 10 years later still stuck in it. A relationship where the more you try to fix things, the worse it all becomes. You thought you were on the right path. But the farther you go, the more lost you feel. Picture a chessboard. Two players sitting face to face. No rules. No referee. Every time you get close to winning, the rules change. You lose. You learn. You play again. You get closer. You lose again. The rules change again. You are not sure if you are playing or being played, but it already feels too late to walk away. Life can be like that sometimes. You grow up being told you must try harder, be better, and come out on top. But no one asks you, what does it mean to win? Who made the rules? Who are you even competing with? You start playing the games that others have laid out. Who has more money? Who is more attractive? Who is more loved? Who finds success sooner? You play because everyone else seems to be playing. You dive in because you are afraid of being left behind. You try harder because you believe you have to prove something. But then one day, you pause. You are out of breath. And you realize you have no idea where the finish line is. You just know you are exhausted. Strangely enough, even the winner sometimes feels nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, just a hollow victory. A pretend trophy for a race that was never real. It is like playing tic-tac-toe. If both players are perfect, the game always ends in a draw. You cannot win. The game is not designed to have a winner. It only exists to keep you playing in circles. Just like those endless debates on the internet. You try to prove your point. So does the other person. The more logic you use, the more they resist. In the end, no one listens. No one changes. Only frustration remains. An invisible fight. A pointless one. But somehow it pulls you in without warning. And then a quiet thought creeps in. If this game cannot be won, then maybe the smartest move is not to play it at all. Maybe winning is not about being better, or having more, or being more right. Maybe it is about not needing to be more than anyone else. Tonight, we are going to explore those kinds of games together. The invisible battles you might be part of without even realizing it. The mental spirals that drain your energy and yet feel impossible to escape. Not to judge, only to notice that sometimes you do not need to win. You do not need to play. You just need to stop. Gently, quietly, and step away. Raid. Let your shoulders relax. Take a long, slow breath. You do not have to understand everything right now. Just feel. This story does not need you to grasp every word. It only asks that you listen, and maybe, at some quiet moment in the night, you will realize just how many games you have been playing, without ever asking yourself, can I choose to stop playing? Think about your alarm clock, that little thing sitting by your bed each night. It does not just wake you up in the morning. It reminds you that today you need to catch up. You have to work. You have to reply to messages. You have to finish yesterday's to-do list. You have to keep running. But running toward what? No one really tells you. Just this. Do not stop. Do you remember when you were little? When you were a child? You did not try to have fun. You just had fun. You did not play to win. You played because playing was enough. No one scored your messy drawings. No one compared your solo dances. And then someone started teaching you about grades, about prizes, about rankings, about the smart ones and the not quite good enough. From there, you started playing games you never chose. Some people spend their whole lives chasing a title, not because they truly want it, but because someone once said, if you have this, then you are successful. Some spend their youth chasing an image, not because it feels right, but because society once told them, this is what is attractive. Some enter a race, only to realize many years later, they never even asked themselves, why am I racing? And here is the paradox. The harder you try to prove you are enough, the more you feel like you are not. You hit a milestone, but someone else goes further. You buy a new car, but your neighbor has the newer model. You post a beautiful photo and quietly compare your likes to someone else's. You end up trapped in a game with no finish line. Because the rule is, there will always be someone ahead of you. That is not failure. That is the structure of the game. It does not need you to be happy. It only needs you to keep playing. You start to believe, if I stop trying, I will lose. If I do not reply, I will be forgotten. If I do not argue, I will be the one who is wrong. But who told you that? Do you remember? The first time you asked yourself something deeper, how do I get out of this feeling? Is it possible that I do not have to try so hard anymore? Not giving up on life, just stepping away from the battle within. A game only exists while you keep playing. A fight only continues when you keep reacting. The question is no longer, how do I win? But, do I even need to play? And maybe, just maybe, the answer does not lie in a better strategy, a bigger goal, or a faster move. It lies in stepping away, in a quiet pause, in one slow breath, in a different kind of gaze. Tonight, you do not have to do anything. You do not need to fix yourself. You do not have to prove a thing. You only need to be here. Let your thoughts float by like clouds. And if part of you starts to feel lighter, it is not because you figured it all out. It is because you finally stopped resisting. Raid, like a tight string that must eventually loosen. Like a hand clenched too long that needs to let go. Maybe when you release, you do not lose. Maybe you return. There are some games you know you are playing. You sign up, you agree, you learn the rules. But there are others you never chose. You just fell into them. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowd. No one looks at you. No one says anything. And yet you feel pressure. No one tells you to dress like them. And still, you change. No one asks you to smile a certain way. And yet, you do. No one openly says you are not free. And yet, you tiptoe. That is when you are playing a game that no one officially started. And one you never agreed to join. A child does not naturally worry about not being good enough. Does not naturally compare eyelash length or math scores. Does not fear being judged for laughing too loudly or sitting alone. Not until they see the adults doing it. Not until they are graded, ranked, or laughed at. That is when the game begins. No introduction, no name, just a glance, a long silence, a mocking smile, and you start to change yourself just to be allowed to stay. A game like that can exist anywhere. At school, where children are only called good if they obey without question. At work, where everyone competes by arriving early and leaving late, even when everyone is exhausted. On social media, where people chase attention through displayed sadness, fake happiness, shock value, and a polished perfection that is not real. You do not have to sign up. You just need to show up and the game is already underway. The moment you are present, you are being scored. You are being liked. You are being seen. You are either remembered or forgotten. Have you ever found yourself choosing a photo not because it captured a meaningful moment, but because it matched your aesthetic? Writing a status update that was not honest, just to avoid feeling left out? Sending a message and then checking constantly to see if the other person had read it? You are playing. No one is forcing you, but you are still playing. The strange thing is, the games with no name are often the hardest to escape, because you do not know you are playing. You only know you feel tired. You only know you cannot seem to stop. In psychology, this is called the unspoken game. No one says it out loud, but everyone understands the rules. No one forces you, but if you do not go along, you will feel excluded. You can sense it when a group of friends always acts cheerful and anyone who is sad is seen as bringing down the mood. When no one at work takes a lunch break, so you are afraid to step away from your desk. When everyone pretends to be fine, so you are afraid to admit you are burned out. You do not want to lose, but you do not know what winning looks like either. You just know. If you do not follow along, people will see you differently. And sometimes they might leave you behind. This game does not need a whistle to start. It does not need a scoreboard. It does not need a coach. The fear of being different is enough. And that is the first paradox of tonight. The more invisible and silent the game, the easier it is to get trapped in it. You are not playing to win. You are playing so you will not be left out. You are not trying to stand out. You are just trying not to fall behind. But then, a quiet question begins to form. Is anyone actually winning this game? Or are we all just burning out together? Look closely, and you will see. Even the people who seem like they are winning are tired too. They are lonely too. They are trying to maintain an image that does not really belong to them. And just like you, they do not know how to stop. You might have entered this game a long time ago. Maybe it was the first time you were laughed at for being yourself. The first time you thought, maybe if I were more like them, I would be more loved. But maybe just like every other game, it cannot continue if you stop playing. Raid. Once you realize you are in a game, you do not have to fight your way to victory. You can simply step away. No announcement needed. No rebellion required. Just take one step back. And that is when you are no longer being controlled. It is the game of more and less, the cycle of never being enough. There is one kind of game that is especially common. Almost everyone has played it. There are no instructions, no clear winner. But everyone knows the rules. It is called, I have to be more. Just a little more. More than that classmate from years ago. More than the coworker from your last job. More than who you were a few months ago. And if possible, more than everyone. You do not call it a game. You call it motivation. You say, I am just trying. But with every step forward, you look around, and someone else is moving faster. At first, you thought you just needed a college degree. Then you needed a stable job. Then a job title, a savings account, a house, a partner, a family. But somehow, there is never an end. There is always someone with a bigger house, a cooler job, a more attractive partner, a life that looks more admirable. The more you have, the less you feel like it is enough. Picture yourself climbing a mountain, but every time you are close to the top, someone points into the distance. The real peak is over there. So you turn, you climb again, only to see another peak ahead. And just like that, you never stop, because you never arrive. That is the game of more and less. It has no finish line, no final scoreboard. It follows only one rule. Do not stop. You begin to measure your self-worth by your progress. Not because you need to grow, but because you are afraid of falling behind. You used to feel joy doing what you loved, but now you check the clock. You track how long you can keep going. You count how many people notice. And if no one sees it, you feel like somehow it did not matter enough. You no longer write because you love writing, but because you want to be known as a good writer. You no longer study out of curiosity, but because you want to be faster, smarter, more knowledgeable. You start turning the things you love into tools for an invisible competition. And then you feel tired, not because you are not good enough, but because the game never lets you feel like you are enough. In psychology, this is known as the hedonic treadmill. You run and run and run. You feel a brief sense of joy every time you outdo someone. But that joy disappears so quickly, and you have to set a new goal and run again. This game is clever. It gives you tiny rewards each time you achieve something. It makes you believe, I am making progress. But really, you are staying in the same place. Only the scenery changes. Only the competitors change. Only the standards change. You are not moving closer to fulfillment. You are only changing the person you want to surpass. The saddest part is, you can win that game, but when you reach the finish line, you are no longer yourself. You have lost your innocence, lost the wonder you once had, lost the ability to feel joy for no reason at all. All that remains is calculation, comparison, worrying about whether you are in the right place. And when someone else moves faster than you, you panic, not because they are amazing, but because you are scared you are falling behind. That is the second paradox of tonight. The more you play to be more, the more you feel like you are not enough. The harder you try to win, the more you feel like you are losing. Can you refuse to play? Can you do something without needing it to be better than someone else? Simply because it feels right? It is not easy, but it is possible. You do not have to prove anything. No one is really keeping score. There is no trophy waiting at the end of this road. There is only you, and the quiet feeling that you lived as yourself. Raid. Maybe. The only way to win the game of more and less is to stop and whisper softly, I am not playing anymore. The game of right and wrong and the cost of always having to be correct. There is one game you know very well. You do not need a board, no teams, no prize money. All you need is an opinion, and that is enough to begin. You say something you believe is true. The other person disagrees. You push back. They argue again. You bring up examples, evidence, even scientific research. Each time they speak, you do not listen, you are preparing your comeback. And each time you speak, they are doing the same. Both of you are sure you are right. Both of you are trying to win. Deep down, you do not want to understand. You want to win. You are not seeking the truth. You are seeking advantage. This game can play out anywhere. At the dinner table, in a company meeting, in the comment section of a video online, or even inside your own mind. When one part of you says, I think I was wrong, and another part snaps back, no, I was right. I have to hold my ground. You see, there are arguments that are not about understanding. They are about victory. No one wants to yield, because yielding means losing. You do not speak to express yourself. You speak to gain the upper hand. You speak to silence the other person, to leave them with no argument left to make. But when you win, what do you really gain? You made the other person fall silent, but you did not change them. You defended your point, but you lost the connection. You won the argument, but you lost the emotional bond. That is the strange thing about the game of right and wrong. The more you try to prove your point, the farther you drift from the original goal, which was to understand each other. Have you ever found yourself in an argument with someone you love, and after several rounds of back and forth, you completely forgot what the discussion was even about? All that remains is frustration, hurt, and distance. We have been taught that being right is power, that being right is value, that being right is victory. But sometimes, being right comes at the cost of being alone. You might be right, but your voice is louder than it needed to be. The way you proved your point made the other person feel small. And when they backed off, you thought you had won. But in truth, both of you lost. Deep down, people do not just want to understand. They want to be understood. They do not want someone to be more correct. They want someone to walk beside them. And that brings us to the third paradox of tonight. The more you try to prove you are right, the more likely you are to lose things that matter more, like listening, connection, and empathy. Not every disagreement needs a winner. Not every conflict has to be resolved right away. You do not always have to get to the bottom of it. Sometimes the strongest way to win is to gently take a step back, not because you are wrong, but because peace is worth more than being right. The game of right and wrong never ends, because everyone carries their own logic, their own past, their own experiences, their own lens. You might win on the surface, but underneath, everyone is just trying to protect themselves. So maybe you do not need to be right today. You can hear a wrong opinion and still smile. You can choose not to reply and still stand strong. You can admit you were wrong and still hold your worth. Raid. Sometimes, your silence is powerful enough to make someone think again. Sometimes, your willingness to listen moves more than 1,000 arguments ever could. And sometimes, the only way to win the game of right and wrong is to refuse to play at all. The game of being seen when you only exist if someone is watching. You post a photo, not to capture a memory, but to see who taps the heart, who clicks to view, who sends you a message saying, "You look amazing today." You tell a story, not because it means something to you, but because it spreads easily, because it draws attention. You walk into a cafe and choose the seat by the window, not because the lighting is nice, but because someone might see you. No one forces you to do it, and yet you do, because you are playing a nameless game, the game of being seen. The rule is simple. The more attention you receive, the more valuable you feel. The more you exist in the minds of others, the more real you believe you are. But when no one mentions you, when no one seems to care what you are thinking, when there is no reply, you start to question your very existence. Deep down, human beings are wired to live through the gaze of others. Since ancient times, being noticed by your group meant safety, connection, and survival. But in the modern world, that instinct has twisted. It is no longer about being seen by those close to you. It has become about being seen by the masses. And the more people, the better. The more unfamiliar, the more exciting. The faster, the more addictive. You might feel like you have lost all value if a post goes unnoticed, if no one listens to your story, if no one reacts to your photo, even if it is just 10 minutes out of a long day, even if it is just natural quiet, you still feel empty because you have tied your self-worth to the width of attention. You no longer do things because you enjoy them. You do them because they might go viral. You no longer share something because it matters. You share it because it might impress someone. Little by little, you lose the ability to be alone. Not because you are lonely, but because you do not know if you even exist unless someone sees you. A post with no likes, a video with no views, an idea with no praise. They are no longer small things. They become existential threats. You start optimizing everything you do, choosing words that catch attention, snapping the most flattering angle, editing the colors to be just a bit more vibrant. There is no longer such thing as just keeping it for yourself. Everything can become a performance. And that is the fourth paradox of tonight. The more people see you, the easier it is to lose who you are. And the more you live for attention, the more you fear what happens when the spotlight turns away. It is like standing beneath the stage lights. Bright, dazzling, but hot, blinding, and full of pressure. You are standing in the center. Everyone applauds. You smile. But deep down, you just want to step off. You wish for a day where you do not have to edit yourself. A morning where you do not have to think about what to wear to match the vibe. A conversation that does not need to quote anything clever. A photo that does not need to hide the truth. You just want to be yourself without needing someone to see you. But is that even possible? Is it possible to live, to feel, to exist without a confirming gaze? Is it possible to do something beautiful without anyone knowing? Is it possible to write in a journal, to paint a picture, to take a deep breath and have that be enough? Raid. Sometimes, the only way to win the game of attention is to stop seeking it. Not because you do not deserve to be seen, but because you no longer need eyes on you to feel worthy. You can step off the stage, turn off the lights, and still know, with quiet certainty, you are here. You are whole. You are enough. The game with no break and the fear of stopping. Imagine a spinning wheel. It turns all day, all night. No pause, no slow, no reverse. You are inside it. No one is pushing you. No one is forcing you. But if you stop, you fall. You do not know when you started spinning with it. Maybe it was when you saw your parents working late into the night, when a teacher said, "If you do not take extra classes, you will fall behind." When you saw someone your age already succeeding, you stepped on. You ran. You picked up speed. And you never stopped. You told yourself, just for a little while, just until I am stable, just until I get through this phase. But time kept moving, and you were too afraid to stop. It quietly became another game. The one who takes a break first is weak. The one who sleeps more is lazy. The one who turns down an opportunity lacks ambition. You do not stop because you are afraid of being left behind. You see someone learning a new skill. You feel you must sign up for a course too. You see others showing off packed schedules. You feel guilty if you do nothing today. You listen to a podcast about self-optimization, and inside your head, a voice echoes, "I am not enough." You start staying up later, doing more at once, planning more than your capacity allows. And when you are tired, you do not allow yourself rest. You think, someone else has it harder. I need to push a bit more. You go through days of exhaustion in silence. No one knows. No one asks. And you do not say a word. Because now, rest feels like failure. You live in a society that glorifies productivity. Busy people are admired. Multitaskers are praised. Those who get enough sleep are lightly mocked. Must be nice to have so much free time. You start to feel ashamed for doing nothing. Even when your body is still, your mind is still running. You think, I should be working right now. There is no clear destination. You are just running because everyone else is running, and you are afraid of falling behind. You used to think of rest as a reward. Now it feels like something you have to earn. You used to take an afternoon nap without guilt. Now you wake up halfway through, thinking about your unfinished to-do list. You used to spend quiet evenings just watching the clouds. Now it feels like wasted time if nothing gets done. You live as if every passing minute must generate value. As if you do not fully maximize it, you are letting someone down. But you are not sure who. Maybe it is your parents. Maybe it is a vision of success. Maybe it is the version of yourself from long ago. The one who believed that running without stopping would lead to happiness. But the strange thing is, the more you run, the more you forget why you started. You once dreamed of freedom. Now, you are bound to a packed calendar. You once wanted a fulfilling life. Now you are just trying to meet your deadlines. Raid. Maybe. Rest is not something you have to deserve. Maybe it is something you simply need. It is not a luxury. It is the most basic condition that allows you to still be human. Maybe the real victory in this game is not being the one who does the most or the one who is the busiest. Maybe it is being the first one to dare to stop, to sit down and say, honestly, I'm tired. And what if I stop playing altogether? You have passed through many games. The game of comparison where someone is always a little ahead. The game of right and wrong where you argue not to understand, but to win. The game of attention where your worth is tied to how many eyes are watching. And the game of performance where no one dares to rest for fear of being left behind. They all have something in common. You do not remember exactly when you started playing. You only remember stopping feels almost impossible. But the strange thing is, no one is forcing you. There is no gatekeeper. There is no official rulebook. No coach yelling at you from the sidelines. There is only one quiet voice in your head. Keep going. Not enough yet. You must do more. And that voice, repeating over and over again, becomes the invisible string that keeps you stuck in the game. Have you ever asked yourself, what would happen if I stopped playing? If you no longer tried to be better than anyone, no longer needed to be the most right, no longer needed to be seen, no longer did things to prove your worth. You just did what felt true, what felt enough. Quietly, gently, maybe you would be afraid. Afraid that others will pass you by. Afraid of being seen as weak. Afraid of no longer being recognized. But maybe, just beyond that fear, is a kind of peace you forgot you ever had. You start sleeping without needing to deserve it. You sit and watch the trees sway outside the window without feeling like you are wasting time. You do something small not so anyone will notice, but because your heart quietly says, this matters. In today's world, stopping is not easy. You might be misunderstood, labeled passive, unambitious, or fragile. But sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who dare to stop. Because they no longer need to be compared, no longer need the stage, no longer need a reason to simply breathe. They choose presence over performance. They choose real life over attention. And maybe you can choose that too. Not to walk away from everything. Not to reject the world, but to make a quiet shift inside. I will no longer let the game define my worth. You can still work, still study, still create, but not to win, to live truthfully. You will know you are leaving the game when you can. Hear of someone else's success without feeling lesser. See someone ahead of you without feeling envy. Do something meaningful without needing anyone to know. Pause for a moment without feeling guilty. You do not need to win to be free. You just need to stop being controlled. Raid. You can step out, walk away from the board, quietly, as if you were never playing. No one will stop you. No one is truly holding you back. There is only you. And the final decision, I am not playing anymore. I am living. And that is enough. In a world that makes you believe you must always keep trying, the one who dares to rest is the bravest. In an era where everyone wants to be right, the one who dares to listen is the deepest. In a society racing for attention, the one who turns inward is the freest. And in every game where there is no clear winner, perhaps the only way not to lose is to refuse to play. Tonight, you do not have to do anything more. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to change right away. You only need to let this question stay with you. If I stop playing, what might begin to bloom? Raid. Life is not a chessboard. You have sat at the board for too long. From arguments meant to prove you were right, to working yourself to exhaustion just so you would not be left behind. From the eyes waiting for you to prove something, to the expectations you placed on yourself without even realizing it. Every day, you wake up and return to a game already in motion. A game you never really chose to play. But have you ever looked up from the board? Have you ever wondered, what would happen if I pushed all the pieces aside and walked away? Not because you lost, not because you gave up, but because you finally realized this was never your game. Since childhood, you were taught that life is a ladder. Elementary school, middle school, university, career, marriage, promotion. Each rung, a new board. Each board, a new set of rules. And every time you reached what they called the goal, another one appeared in front of you. You were taught to fight to survive, to seize every opportunity, to strike fast and win, that no one will wait for you. The language of life, strangely enough, has been built from the imagery of games and war. You must claim your spot, face your opponents, compete, defend your position, assert your dominance, as if each day were a round of combat. And if you lose one round, everything is gone. But what if life is not a series of victories? What if no one is actually keeping score? What if there is no leaderboard? No finish line? Then maybe everything you are trying so hard to outrun is just an illusion agreed upon by the crowd. You were not born to become a winner. You were born to experience, not to be better than anyone else, but to fully feel what it means to be you. Maybe you do not have to climb any ladders at all. Maybe you do not have to prove anything to anyone. Maybe you have been enough, all along. Picture yourself walking into a forest. There is no map, no destination, no one watching. You simply walk. You hear the wind through the leaves. You smell the damp earth. You touch the rough bark. No one is grading you on how fast or slow you go. There is no first or last. You are not late. You are not early. You are simply present. And yet, we have grown used to life as a test. Every action must have a reason. Every step must follow logic. Every passing minute must pay off. We struggle to accept that something might simply exist without purpose, without a goal, without a reward. But maybe those are the very things most worth living for. You do not need to be useful to exist. You do not need to succeed to deserve love. You do not need to impress to be valuable. You can sit in stillness, breathe, laugh to yourself, watch the clouds drift, listen to sad music, and do nothing at all, yet still be a complete, living soul, yet still be a complete and living presence. You do not need a chessboard. You do not need a table. You do not need an audience. You do not need a prize. You only need a space where you can be yourself without needing to win. Raid. Sometimes, all suffering begins the moment we forget that we can live without playing any game at all. No comparisons. No proving. No better or worse. No higher or lower. Just presence. The fear of being left behind, the silent engine of every game. You might already know a game does not suit you. You may have whispered to yourself many times, I do not want to play anymore. And yet, you keep going, still staying up late, still pretending to be fine, still smiling when you do not feel joy, still moving along a current that, deep down, you know does not belong to you. Why? What makes you keep running, even when you no longer know where the finish line is? What makes you grit your teeth and push, even when you feel completely exhausted? It is not because you are overly ambitious. It is not because you love competition. It is not because you want to be better than anyone. It is because you are afraid of being left behind. From a very young age, you understood something. The one who is left behind is not loved. The child who is not as good as their peers gets scolded. The child who is not obedient gets compared. The child who is not outstanding gets forgotten. And so you learned an unspoken rule of the world. To stay, you must be useful. To be loved, you must be lovable. To be recognized, you must be slightly better than others. You do not play because you enjoy it. You play because you do not want to be left out. And so you step into the game not out of a hunger to win, but from a silent fear of losing. You are afraid that if you do not reply to a message right away, people will think you are cold. Afraid that if you do not perform well, you will no longer be trusted. Afraid that if you rest, someone will overtake you. Afraid that if you fall behind, you will lose everything. Fear is a strange kind of engine. It does not shout. It does not pressure you with words. It just whispers, so softly, so familiarly, "Be careful, if you stop, they will leave you behind." You do not dare let go of a certain image because you are afraid they will stop loving you if you show your true self. You do not dare decline an invitation because you are afraid of losing your place in the group. You do not dare admit that you are tired because you are afraid they will see you as weak. And so you stay. You continue. You pretend. You smile. You run. You push through. Not because you want to win, but because you are too afraid to lose. You thought you were playing by choice, but in truth, you are being held hostage by an unnamed fear. And that is the next paradox. There are games you cannot quit not because they are too enjoyable, but because you are too afraid of losing your place. But the scariest question of all is this: what exactly am I trying to hold on to? A relationship that no longer brings you joy? A job that you have to force yourself to show up for each morning? A perfect image that constantly drains your energy? You hold on to it all simply because you are afraid. If I let go, I will no longer know who I am. We are not just afraid of losing. We are afraid that when we are no longer excellent, no longer striving, no longer standing out, we will no longer be loved. That is the deepest fear in all of us. The fear of losing our worth when we are no longer useful. But maybe it is just an illusion. A belief rooted in the past. A voice from childhood that was never fully healed. And if you sit long enough, quietly enough, and truly look into that feeling, you might see another truth. You are still worthy of love even when you do nothing at all. You still matter, even when you are weak, tired, withdrawn, and far from perfect. You do not have to be valuable to be allowed to stay. You have always been enough simply because you exist. Raid. You do not have to play to be seen. You do not have to win to be loved. You can stop, slow down, step back, and still have a place in this world. Because that place never needed anyone's permission. It has always been yours. If not to win, then why live at all? One day, you wake up, and you simply no longer want to run. You no longer want to do something just because it is useful. You no longer want to continue a job just because it is stable. You no longer want to maintain an image just because others expect it of you. You sit down, you breathe, quietly, and then the question appears, as clear as morning light. If I no longer play the game, then what do I live for? When you let go of the need to win or lose, to be better or worse, to be right or wrong, a space opens up. A space that feels both terrifying and freeing. There is no applause. No one keeping score. No more rankings to climb. Only an unnamed field. You sit inside that silence, and you feel lost. Because all your life, no one ever taught you how to live without playing by the rules of a game. You were taught how to win, how to be better, how to take control, how to adapt to the race. But no one taught you how to simply be yourself. No one taught you how to live a day without needing to achieve something. No one ever said to you, just being alive is enough. So when you step out of the game, you do not know where to go. No map, no goal, no guide. Only a silent question. What do I live for, if not to prove something? The answer may come slowly, not loudly, not dramatically, not in any logical form. It may come like a soft breeze, a quiet afternoon, a glance from someone you love. It may arrive in the moment you stop just long enough to truly listen to what matters to you. Not every life needs a great purpose. Not everyone needs to change the world. Not all people are meant to leave a legacy. Some people live to care for a small garden, to hear their child's laughter in the morning, to paint a picture that no one will ever see, to sit in silence beside someone they love. And that is enough. Life does not need to become a grand project. It can be a string of small moments, whole, soft, immeasurable. You do not need to become someone else. You just need to return to yourself. Not the ideal self, not the optimized version, but the true self, whole, tender, and honest. You live not to impress, but to connect, not to stand out, but to feel close. You live not to climb higher, but to root deeper. And then you will find there are days when you achieve nothing successful, and yet you still feel warm. You still feel a quiet glow, like candlelight in the night. Not from outside, but from within. You begin choosing what feels right, not just what is beneficial. You start meeting those who bring comfort, not just those who are advantageous. You begin to speak less and listen more. You react less, defend less, prove less. And in that letting go, you begin to truly live. Not like a player trying to win, but like a living being, truly feeling the world. Raid. Because life is not about winning. Life is about touching something real. A warm cup of tea, a soft hand to hold, a quiet gaze, a smile with no purpose. No one will applaud. No one will rank it. But in that moment, you will know you are living not to be better than anyone else, but to deeply feel the life that is already yours. Maybe we do not have to stop playing. Maybe we just need to choose a different game. Maybe you are sitting in stillness right now, just having left the old games, the exhausting boards, the invisible scorecards, the endless races with no finish line. You are breathing slower. You are hearing your heart more clearly. And for the first time in a long while, you are no longer in a hurry. But then a new question arrives, softly, without pressure, like a gentle whisper. If I no longer play the old games, is there a new way to play? Not every game is harmful. Not every board drains your soul. The issue is not that you are playing, it is the kind of game you are choosing. There are games with no losers, only people fully alive. There are lives without races, only personal rhythms and inner joy. So what is that new kind of game? Maybe it is the game of enough, where you do not need more, only the right things that make you feel truly alive. You do not need to stand at the top. You only need to stand steady in who you are. Or perhaps it is the game of kindness. You do not score points by achievements. You simply leave a bit of gentleness in others. A kind question, a knowing look, a presence warm enough to help someone feel safe. Or maybe it is the game of authenticity. You do not need to stand out. You only need to stop pretending. You do not chase an image. You just live in alignment with what matters to you. And strangely enough, when you begin playing these kinds of games, you still feel motivation, but it no longer feels rushed, no longer pressured, no longer driven by the voice saying, "Hurry up, you are still not enough." The drive now comes from a quieter place, from deep within, like a small flame in your chest, not blazing, but never fading. You work because it feels meaningful. You create because it brings you joy. You learn something new not to be better than others, but because you are curious, you are interested, and you feel alive when you expand. And yes, you can still be persistent, hardworking, and focused. But you are no longer burned out, because you no longer push yourself to prove anything. You have changed the game, from competition to connection, from comparison to creativity, from proving to presence. Now, each day is no longer a loop to survive. It becomes a space to explore, not needing to be perfect, just needing to be real. You can fail and not fall apart. You can rest without guilt. You can be silent and not worry about being forgotten. Raid. You are no longer playing to defeat others. You are playing to walk with yourself. Not the one who finishes first gets the prize, but the one who lives the deepest, feels the peace. And in this new game, you are not alone. Because the more people who stop, the more people who choose a different rhythm, the more this world opens up softer, more breathable spaces. Kindness is no longer a luxury. Stillness is no longer laziness. Honesty is no longer weakness. You do not need to force yourself. You do not need to shout. You do not need to fight for a spot. You only need to stand in your own place, and from there, live in your own way. True freedom is knowing when not to play. All our lives, we have been told that freedom means being able to do whatever we want, to choose the career we love, to go where we dream, to live by our own beliefs. But as you grow older, you start to realize something strange. There are people who look completely free, but inside, they are still deeply bound. They can go anywhere, but they can never stop. They can do everything, but they never know when it is enough. They can change images, paths, and goals, but they are terrified of leaving the game, because inside them, there is still a voice saying, "If you stop playing, you will be forgotten. If you stop, you will be nobody." So even when they have every choice, they do not truly choose. They are guided by fear, by expectation, by the hunger to be seen, to be validated, and that is not freedom. That is a quiet form of captivity. True freedom is not about how many games you can pick from. It is the courage to choose none at all, to look at an invitation, a challenge, a popular trend, and gently say, "No," not because you are incapable, not because you cannot keep up, but because you know what you are looking for, and it is not in that game. Freedom is seeing others succeed, and not panicking, not rushing, not fearing you are falling behind. You simply breathe, and remember, their life is not a signal that yours must change. Freedom is when someone attacks you, and you do not need to strike back just to be right. You can see the pain behind their words, and you choose to protect your peace. Freedom is when you can turn down a compliment, a tempting contract, a grand opportunity, because you know it does not align with the rhythm you have chosen. That is not apathy. It is conscious discernment, a quiet kind of maturity. This world will never stop inviting you to play. It has so many appealing games. The game of being famous. The game of getting rich fast. The game of optimizing yourself to perfection. The game of constant upgrades to avoid falling behind. Every day, hundreds of doors invite you in. But if you are not careful, you will end up living a life that is only Reactive. Always chasing. Always afraid of being too slow. Always feeling not enough. And you will forget, you were not born to react. You were born to be present, to choose, to live your way. Raid. Freedom does not come from being able to do everything. Freedom comes from knowing what does not need to be done at all. When you begin to say no to the old games, a new space opens up. A life that is not loud, but deep. Not flashy, but real. Not frantic, but fully alive. And maybe, within that space, you will find the kind of freedom you searched the world for, only to discover it was always hidden in your ability to stop. Even refusing to play can become another race. You have learned how to stop. You have become brave enough not to react, not to compete, not to strain yourself, not to try to be more than others. You return to yourself. You feel lighter. You breathe deeper. You feel more at peace. But then, one day, you notice that others are also stepping back, also slowing down, also choosing to leave the stage. And something strange happens. You begin to compare how non-competitive you are. You see someone meditating 60 minutes every morning. You can only manage 15. You see them living with just 30 items. You still cannot let go of your bookshelf. You read their deep reflections on refusing the race. And you think to yourself, I feel the same way, but I cannot write as beautifully as they do. And quietly, subtly, you fall into a new game. The game of being more awakened. The game of being more peaceful. The game of quitting more elegantly. This time, there are no scoreboards, no titles, no judges. But in your heart, there is still a voice asking, am I on the right path? Have I become as enlightened as they are? Am I giving up in the most graceful way possible? You start wanting to be more right, more calm, more minimalist, more real. And if someone seems more at peace than you begin to feel unsettled again. And that is the next paradox. Even letting go can become a competition, a race with no trophies, but with ego quietly counting in the background. Have you ever found yourself trying hard not to try? Pushing yourself to live detached? Trying to control your mind, only to feel more tired? In those moments, you are not living truthfully. You are only changing the rules of the game. From the game of more to the game of less. From the game of standing out to the game of hiding in an appealing way. From the game of being right to the game of being philosophically more correct. This is a subtle trap because it is not loud. It is not glamorous. It is not publicly praised. And precisely because of that, it is even more dangerous. Because you believe you have stepped out. But in truth, you have only changed playing fields. True freedom does not come from picking a better game. It comes from not needing to compete at all. Not competing over who is more awakened, who slows down better, who lets go of more, who sees impermanence more clearly. You do not need to wake up faster than anyone else. You do not need to go inward more beautifully. You only need to be honest with yourself. Honest that today you are still tired. Honest that you still want to be recognized. Honest that you are not completely at ease yet. Honest that you are still learning, still finding your way. And that honesty is what will lead you out of every new spiral. Raid. You do not need to become the perfect, slow living example. You do not need to force yourself to be calm. You do not need to become a symbol of ideal surrender. You only need to sit still, breathe, and know you are still full of contradictions. But you no longer need to chase them. True freedom is not about being perfect in letting go. It is being willing to live honestly even while you are still learning how to stop. When there is no one left to impress, there is nothing left to become. There is a state quieter than silence, deeper than peace, beyond right and wrong, beyond better or worse, beyond holding on or letting go. It cannot be described. It cannot be named. It has no clear shape. Only when you have stepped away from every game board, when you stop comparing yourself to others, when you are no longer chasing praise and no longer afraid of judgment, only then do you begin to feel this state. It is not enlightenment, not high vibration, not spiritual attainment. It is simply a kind of honest presence where you no longer need to become anything. You do not need to live better. You do not need to be deep. You do not need to be philosophically correct. You do not need to reach higher realms. You only need to be here, with what is, with the body that breathes, with sunlight slipping through the curtain, with the fan spinning gently on a quiet afternoon. You no longer try to define yourself. You do not label yourself someone who stopped playing. You do not see yourself as someone who has figured it out. You no longer need to be different from anyone else. You are simply a part of life, without a name, without a gold medal, without judgment, without a stage. You walk past others without comparison. You see their success without disturbance in your heart. You feel your own failures and remain light, not because you are noble, not because you are awakened, but because you no longer stand outside, measuring. As long as you are standing outside, you will always see someone as more or less. You will always feel the need to arrive somewhere. You will still live like someone editing an unfinished draft. But when you truly dissolve into life, no longer watching from the outside, you begin to feel a deep kind of safety. Not from control, but from full acceptance. It is not that everything is fine. It is, I no longer need everything to be fine in order to allow myself to live fully. You can be sad without running away. You can be tired without feeling ashamed. You can be behind without rushing into self-improvement. You can be wrong without trying to defend it. True life begins when you stop trying to protect an image of yourself. You no longer see yourself as a project under construction. No longer see yourself as a rough draft that needs editing. No longer search for the correct answer to your life. You no longer need to become someone, because you already are, fully. Raid. Everything you once tried to prove can be released. Everything you once chased may still be beautiful, but it no longer controls you. All the games you once got stuck in, they may still go on out there, but you are no longer a player. You simply pass by, quietly, and fully whole. This is not a final destination, not a high spiritual state, not an end goal. It is simply the state of no longer needing a goal. A cool glass of water in your hand, a ray of sunlight on the floor, a soft breath at night. All of it suddenly becomes enough. And strangely, when you stop searching, everything you once chased begins to arrive, not as rewards, but as the natural outcome of your ease. You do not need to be the best. You do not need to be the most loved. You do not need to reach the highest state. You only need to live truthfully. And if there is no longer anything to win or lose, then what remains? When all the games have ended, when all the scoreboards have been torn down, when every expectation melts into the morning mist, when no one calls your name, no one claps, no one waits for you to prove anything. You sit, alone, in the final quiet, and then the last question appears. Not loud, not grand, just a breath, thin as thread. So, what is left? Not the image you built, Not the achievements you posted, not the roles you once performed so well, but rather who is sitting there when everything falls away? A person with nothing left to prove. No need to pretend to be okay. No longer playing, no longer running. No more better, no more worse. No label to carry. Only life. It does not need to be beautiful. It does not need to be logical. It does not need to be productive. It only needs to be real. This life might cry. It might tremble. It might be soft and full of contradiction. But it no longer hides. This life might breathe slowly and watch a single leaf fall, as if that were the only thing worth happening today. When you stop playing, you begin to touch what is true. Not an idea of happiness, but the feeling of sitting alone and feeling light. Not a goal to live better, but the ease of not needing to go anywhere. You look at the sky not to take a picture. You listen to the birds not to post a story. You cook a meal not to impress. You listen to someone not to display how deeply you understand. All of these things simply because they deserve to exist without needing a reason. And so do you. Raid when there is no need to be better than anyone, no need to be right, no need to win. Only then can you truly remain with yourself. No more wrestling, no more editing, no more racing. Just you. And what is? Perhaps what remains after all the games is not a conclusion, not a victory, not a great truth, but a quiet presence, so light no one notices, yet so steady nothing can shake it. You may lose everything: status, work, relationships, even the beliefs you once held as truth. But if you still keep the ability to be truly present, then you have never truly lost, because you are no longer playing, not because you gave up, but because you have seen the rules and chosen to step away. No one needs to understand you. No one needs to clap for you. No one needs to follow you. You only need to live truthfully. And like that, in a world full of invisible games, where people rush to be more, you quietly become the only one clear enough to not need to win, not because you cannot, but because you have seen clearly. Only when you no longer need to win are you truly free. So maybe you begin with something very small: a deep breath, an afternoon of doing nothing, a conversation that needs no right answers, a walk with no photos taken, one moment of choosing not to play. And maybe, when you stop trying to get anywhere at all, you will touch the very place you have searched for your whole life. Not ahead, not behind, but right here, within, the moment you stop and everything begins to turn inside out. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of a crowded street. Everyone is moving fast. Everyone seems to know what they are doing. Everyone is in a hurry. And you once walked with them, without questions, without doubt, just following along. One day, because you are tired, you stop, not because you have figured it all out, simply because you can no longer carry on. And in that very moment of stopping, you begin to see clearly. Everyone else is still moving, still busy, still chasing. But from where you are standing, you begin to see they are not actually getting anywhere. They are going in circles, then another circle, and another. You see their faces tense, their hearts racing, their eyes always fixed forward, as if the answer to all their exhaustion lies ahead. But then they return to the exact spot where you stopped. No one notices, and they continue walking. You suddenly feel sad, not for them, but for yourself, for how long you lived like that, without ever asking why. That is the first moment of awakening. You do not just stop your behavior. You stop inside your mind. You no longer think, I need to keep up. Instead, you begin to ask, where have I been going all these years? You no longer believe in rushing. You begin to see everything slow down. You reread all those so-called inspirational quotes and realize they no longer speak to you. Quotes like, success means sacrifice. Failure just means you did not try hard enough. As long as you do not stop, you will eventually get there. Suddenly, they sound like echoes from a world you no longer belong to. You begin to ask new questions. What does success really mean? Is losing truly a mistake? Why do we always need to reach a finish line? And who even created that finish line? Each question becomes a crack in the old wall. Little by little, what you once believed to be truth begins to shake. You no longer look at successful people with pure admiration. You begin to see what lies behind that success. The exhaustion, the unseen sacrifices, the versions of themselves they had to abandon. You no longer wish to be like them. You begin to long to return to yourself. You no longer see a busy day as a meaningful one. You begin to notice the quiet beauty of a slow afternoon. You no longer need to be seen. You feel at peace when you are alone, with no applause needed. All of that did not come from a book, not from a lecture, not from a philosophy. It came from that one moment when you stopped, and from there, you began to turn around, no longer looking ahead like everyone else. You begin to look within. You stop asking, what have I achieved? You begin to ask, is what I am living for truly mine? You may not have the answer right away. And that is perfectly okay. Because for the first time in your life, you are asking questions. Instead of just chasing goals, you are no longer moving forward. But you are not falling behind either. You are simply waking up. Raid. The peak of awareness does not come like a lightning strike. It is not a magic phrase that changes everything. It is a quiet afternoon when you realize, I no longer want to go anywhere. I just want to come home. And you do not need to do anything to prove it. All you need to do is sit down, truly still, truly deep, truly you. When everything you believe begins to collapse, what remains standing? At some point, you stop believing in what once held you up. You no longer believe that trying hard is enough. You no longer believe that everyone needs a destination. You no longer believe that silence is weakness or that success equals meaning. Not because you are rebellious, not because you are disillusioned, but because you begin to see more clearly. You look back at your journey and realize some of the things you chased were never truly yours. They were what you were taught to want. You remember the first time you were praised for an achievement. It felt sweet. It felt warm. It made you feel worthy. From that moment, you began living for praise. You chose your path based on whether it would be recognized, not based on whether it truly lit something up inside you. You look back at all the big goals you once set. Was any of them truly born from your heart? Or were they borrowed from society's dreams? A respected job, a complete home, a prestigious degree, a polished image. You once thought you were choosing, but now you see it clearly. They were preloaded choices. And when those things begin to fall away, you feel empty, confused, even hurt. Not because you lost anything real, but because what you held on to turns out to be clouds, not ground. You thought you were climbing a mountain, but now you realize you were standing on a plume of smoke. No foundation, no substance. only the repetition of what others have believed. And then you fall. You fall out of the old value system. You fall out of the right-wrong framework that raised you. You fall away from the images you once took pride in. You fall out of the version of yourself you thought was real. But the strange thing is, this fall does not break you. It makes you lighter. When there is nothing left to hold on to, you begin to feel a new ground beneath you. Not something you can name. Not something to describe as a new belief or new philosophy, but something quiet and solid inside. You begin to realize you are not what you have done, not what you have known, not what others think, not even the things you were once proud of. You are what remains. After all of that is gone, no identity, no role to play, no story to tell, no future to build, only bare presence. And in that very moment, for the first time in your life, you feel peace without needing a reason. Not because you made it, not because you are on the right path, not because you lived well, simply because I am here, and that is enough. Raid. The collapse of old beliefs is not meant to leave you lost, but to help you see clearly. All along, you were standing on things that were never truly solid. And now, as they dissolve, you are not lost. You are simply beginning to truly touch the ground. No longer attaching yourself to any titles. No longer binding yourself to any single path. You begin to live like water, flowing with what comes, soaking into what is here, needing no name, no form, yet always whole. When there is nothing left to cling to, you finally begin to see. There is a stage in the journey of awakening that few people speak about, a quiet pause that comes after you have shed all your old layers, but before anything new has taken form. No more goals to chase, no more beliefs to defend, no more clear identity of who I am, only a very real emptiness. You are no longer led by old habits, but you have not yet learned a new way to live. You have stepped off the game board, but have not yet found your own path. You are like someone who has just left a crowded city and wandered into a deep forest. No map, no streetlights, only the silence surrounding you. At first, that emptiness feels unsettling. The mind is used to having a direction, a plan, a goal. Now there is nothing to grip onto, and the mind begins to panic. It whispers, "What am I even doing? Am I drifting? Everyone else is moving forward, and I'm just still." You open your phone, watching others living their busy lives. You listen to a podcast about optimizing your schedule, designing your life, becoming your best self. And a part of you feels like you are falling behind. The old no longer fits. The new has not yet arrived. You are standing in between, an unnamed space, shapeless, with no guide. And this is where many people return to the old game board, because this emptiness is frightening. It feels easier to keep playing than to stand in a space no one acknowledges, easier to keep competing than to face a silence no one sees, no one applauds, no prizes to be won. But if you are brave and stay there just a little longer, just a little more, you will see the emptiness does not destroy you. It cleanses you. With no image left to protect, you begin to see who you are beneath all labels. With no expectations to carry, you begin to feel what your heart truly longs for. With no ideas left about being good, being successful, being admirable, you begin to sense a human being who does not need to be anyone at all. That moment is so delicate, so easy to miss, so easy to fear. But if you let it happen, If you do not rush to fix it with something else, it will teach you a lesson so deep. Emptiness is not the absence of something. It is the space where what is real can finally grow. With no more noise, you can hear the smallest voice inside. With no more stage, you see that you can walk without needing an audience. With no more scoreboard, you realize you do not need to stand above anyone to feel worthy. That emptiness is not the end of the road. It is a doorway, a passage from the world of performance into the world of truth. And if you are brave enough to walk through, you will not return the same. No longer the one always searching, no longer the one needing validation. You become someone who knows. Stillness is also a motion. Going nowhere is also a choice. And life does not need a plan to be profound. Dander. You can close your eyes in the middle of all the unknowns and feel a quiet sentence rise. Even when nothing is certain, I am still allowed to be here. It is not a statement, not a philosophy. It is a return. Stay with the emptiness, and you will see you were never missing. Picture an old, forgotten garden. Everything that once grew has been pulled up. No more flowers. No more vegetables. No more neat rows of carrots or proud roses. Just a bare patch of soil. Still, without purpose. And then, the rain begins. The first drops soak into the earth. No applause. No countdown. No audience. And in that place where no one expects anything, a tiny sprout begins to push through. No need to name it. No need to showcase it. It is simply an honest form of life. That is what happens when you stay long enough with the emptiness inside you, not filling it with busyness, not soothing it with concepts, not erasing it with personal development goals, just staying with the echo of not knowing, staying with the feeling of nothing to do today, staying with the silence when others are succeeding and you are not, staying not to overcome, but to simply be present. And then something small begins to emerge, not from calculation, not from the mind, but from deep within. Maybe a gentle impulse to make a warm cup of tea, to take a slow walk under the late afternoon sun, to call your mother not for a reason, just because you miss her. These things, so small they almost seem meaningless. But strangely, they do not need meaning. Because when you stop forcing yourself to be productive, every moment begins to carry life. You begin to feel your own heart being nourished, not by success, not by validation, but by the simple kindness you offer to yourself. You cook not to eat healthy. You clean not to declutter your life. You sit quietly not to meditate properly, but simply because you feel like doing it, gently, softly, without purpose. And from there, a different kind of wisdom begins to appear, not from books, not from logic, not from reasoning. It is the wisdom of life itself, of someone who is no longer seeking a direction, but has become part of the direction. You no longer have to decide where to go, because each step you take is already the path. You no longer need to strive to live with purpose, because the act of living simply is already complete. And then you realize the most important truth. You are never lacking. You are simply surrounded by too many extras, too many ideals, too many expectations, too many pieces of advice, too many games. Now that they are gone, you do not feel empty. You feel home, raid, home in the feeling of your hand touching cool water, in sunlight spilling across the porch in the afternoon, in morning bird song, in a heartbeat that does not need to be praised. You do not need to be special. You do not need to stand out. You do not need to be chosen. You only need to be. And the miracle is that very simplicity is what makes you the most profound. Depth does not mean being higher than others. It means touching your own self. In the world of games, depth is often confused with height. Those who stand higher are assumed to be deeper. Those who have achieved more are thought to understand more. Those with greater reach are assumed to possess greater wisdom. But when you step out of the race, you begin to see a different truth. Depth is not measured by the rungs you have climbed. It is measured by the stillness you carry inside. Someone can soar high and still live in deep insecurity. Someone can speak great words, but be unable to hear themselves in silence. And perhaps there is someone with no fame at all, quietly tending a garden each day, yet living with the fullness the whole world is searching for. True depth is not loud. It is not dazzling. It does not need a label like deep. It is something you can only feel in a still moment, when no one is watching, when there is nothing to prove. A deep life is not a different life. It is a life that touches the deepest layer within yourself. That place does not offer answers to every question, but it holds a gentle acceptance that not everything needs to be answered. That place has no specific goal, but it carries a quiet inner direction, guiding you clearly toward what fits you and what deserves a no. That place has no role models, but it holds a kind of pure naturalness. You do not need to play any part. You just need to live as you truly are. A person who lives deeply may not say much, but when they look at you, you feel heard without being judged. They do not offer advice. They do not try to fix you. They are simply there, fully present, like a gentle breeze softening a scorching day. You will not find them on the trending list. You will not see them arguing online. You will not watch them trying to stand out, but you will see them beside someone in pain without rushing them, with a child without trying to correct, with themselves without abandoning. They do not need to win any game, because they have seen that it is in stepping away from the game that they gain the truest presence. Living deeply is not about going far, not about knowing widely, not about solving life. Living deeply is being with what is, without needing to decorate it. A hug without a script. A smile not born of politeness. A tear without needing a reason. An afternoon of doing nothing, yet feeling whole, as if nothing more needs to be achieved. Raid. You do not need to be different to live deeply. You just need to return. Return to the things you once passed by, to the person you once forgot in all the games, to the quiet whisper, the one that is most real within you. And then you will realize depth does not make you stand out. It makes you enough. No more goals, no more rolesso. What leads the way? When you have let go of all your roles, all your identities, all your games, when you no longer wish to be better, faster, or more outstanding, when there are no more goals ahead to chase, and no past behind to protect, then what do you live for? This is the question that unsettles many, because we are used to living with direction, used to being pushed by pressure or pulled by expectation, used to doing things because we have to, used to striving because that is how it should be. So, if there is no more have to and no more should, do we drift? The answer is no. Not if you learn to listen to what is quietly speaking within. Not the scream of fear. Do something, or you will fall behind. Not the whisper of ego. I should prove something. Not the echo of society. People your age already have XYZ, but a voice so gentle, so still, like a breeze across your heart. What do I want to do today? If it is not for anyone else, maybe it is writing a few lines. Maybe it is watering the plants. Maybe it is sitting under the porch, watching the rain, with no thoughts at all. Things so small, the mind used to overlook them, because they did not lead to any achievement. But you know what? It is exactly those small, aimless things that nourish your soul. You will see, once pressure no longer guides you, a natural current begins to rise. Not what I want, but what wants to be lived through me. It is a morning where you suddenly want to be silent. No texting, no updates, just breathing, letting your heart settle. You did not plan for it. You just allowed it. And that very permission becomes your new compass. Not a compass for finding direction, but one that senses what is true for you in this moment. You begin to live by feeling, not by expectation. Not what must I accomplish this year, but how can I live this day fully? Gradually, you begin to see. Each day is no longer a race. It is a space to experience what is unfolding. You no longer force yourself to grow nonstop. You allow yourself to rest, to breathe, to pause, to stay where you are without guilt. And the paradox is, it is exactly when you stop trying to grow that you begin to mature for real. No more chasing spotlights out of restlessness. No more panicking every time someone else gets ahead. No more treating your life like a self-improvement project. You begin to live like a river, knowing how to flow, knowing when to be still, and never needing to repeat itself. Raid, what guides you now is no longer ambition, no longer fear, no longer outside ideals, but your own sensitivity to yourself. You are sensitive to what exhausts you and you stop. Sensitive to what lights you up and you move forward. No explanations needed. No long-term plan required. Just feeling. And that is enough for a life. Not for anyone. Not for anything. Not to become something. Just because that thing deserves to be lived. A life that does not need to whiningly to be truly lived. You no longer try to win the game, because now you see, the game never needed a winner. And you do not need to renounce it all to be noble. You simply no longer feel the need to play. And then you enter a very different way of living. No longer dividing your days into productive day, wasted day, important day. Because every day, even if you just make tea, watch the rain, or speak a few kind words to someone, has equal value. Like a tree does not judge the seasons. Spring is not better, autumn not old, winter not useless. It just stands whole through every phase. You live like the tree, not reaching upward to surpass others, just reaching for the light. And that light is whatever makes you feel warm inside. You live like a stream, not needing to reach the ocean to feel worthy, just flowing because flowing is your nature. And sometimes, being still as glass, still a stream, you no longer measure time by productivity, no longer force every hour to yield returns. You let an afternoon pass like a drifting cloud, carrying no rain, no sun, just its own presence. And you begin to see, the deepest kind of life is one that does not need decoration. No schedules, no headlines, no rush. You still work, still love, still clean, cook, talk, but not for accomplishments. Not to report it to anyone, not even to jot it down in a journal. Just to be fully present. You are not escaping the world. You simply no longer let the world define your worth. You do not need to climb a mountain, because even here, in the heart of the city, you can live by your own rhythm. Slow, gentle, and without losing yourself. When someone says, "Aren't you afraid of falling behind?" you smile and quietly feel the answer rising inside. I am not in that race anymore. You do not judge anyone still playing the game, because you know each person wakes up in their own time. You simply are no longer turning the wheel. And then you realize life does not have to be grand to be worth living. It only needs a quiet evening, a genuine conversation, a nameless act of kindness, a presence not striving, and that alone is already a whole life. Raid. When you stop playing, you do not disappear from the world. You become a low note in a noisy symphony. That low note, though rarely noticed, is what holds the rhythm for the entire song. You do not need to become great. You only need to become real. And that realness is what gives you enough peace to live a life with no regrets. Maybe the way to win is to stop trying to win. You have seen it already. Seen how the world builds games. Seen how we get swept into them, thinking there is an exit at the edge of the board. Seen yourself running, climbing, striving, then repeating it all again. You have stopped. You no longer believe that winning will make you whole. You have stepped back to where you once thought there was only emptiness, and realized it was not empty at all. You no longer need a destination, because every step, if taken with true presence, is already an arrival. You no longer need to win, because there is no one who must be above, and no one who must be below. There are only those still playing, and those who have stopped, so they can finally begin to live. Stopping the game does not mean giving up. It is a conscious release. It is seeing the spinning wheel and choosing not to feed it anymore. It is no longer needing to win an argument, no longer needing to be right in every logic, no longer needing to prove anything, only to return to what is true. You are not pushing the world away. You are just no longer being pulled by it. You are not fighting anyone. You are simply no longer willing to fight yourself. This kind of letting go does not fall into despair. It falls into peace. It does not come from having nothing left to lose. It comes from realizing you were never lacking to begin with. You begin to see every game is built on one assumption. I am not enough. I need more. I will be happy if I can achieve that. But once you see that you are already enough, the entire structure of the game collapses. Nothing left to prove. No one left to beat. No standard left to reach. And no more fear of being left behind. You slow down, but you do not feel like you are falling behind. You go quiet, but you do not feel forgotten. You stay still, but you do not feel like you are missing something. You live a simple life, but not a shallow one. A gentle life, but not a careless one. A life without achievements, yet one that leaves a quiet echo in the hearts of those who passed you by. You do not need to be great to be remembered. You just need to be real. And that touches something far more lasting than fame. Raid. And then you sit down, not to meditate, not to practice, not to pursue any special purpose. You just sit and realize, maybe the only way to win is to stop playing. To stop playing so you can finally begin to live. To stop playing so you can stop reacting and start choosing. To stop playing so you can see that the moment you pause, everything you once searched for begins to arrive like a soft breeze through an open window. No need to seize it. Just open your heart. You gently close your eyes. Not to hide, but to feel. In this stillness, in this release, a deeper life is smiling softly. It does not need a name. It does not need to be seen. It is simply, you are here. And that is enough. This is not the end. You are just beginning. Now, maybe you are sitting quietly, alone at night, in a small room, while the world outside keeps rushing to its own rhythm. You may still hear the cars, See your packed calendar? Notice unread messages waiting. Everything is still there. But something inside you is no longer the same. You have not completely changed. You do not need to. You do not have to let go of everything by tomorrow. There is no rush. But you have leaned gently in a different direction. A direction with no map, no GPS, no one pointing the way. A direction you feel out bit by bit. Every time you pause and ask, do I truly want this, or do I only think I should? And that question, as small as a drop of water, has the power to turn your whole ship around. From here, you do not need all the answers in advance. You just need enough honesty to stay with each question. No judgment, no hurry, no explanation. You do not need to begin a new lifestyle. You do not need to post anything about it. You do not need to become a better version of yourself. You just need to stay with the awakening that is quietly growing in you. That awakening may be fragile. There will be times you fall back into the old games. Times when you try to prove something again. Times when you crave approval, want to win. And that is okay. Awakening is not a once-and-for-all moment. It is a dance of stepping forward and falling back. But each time you return with more compassion. You stop blaming yourself. You stop calling yourself weak for getting caught up again. You just notice it and let it go more gently than the last time. Little by little, you become someone who is no longer easily pulled by other people's games, no longer easily angered by a comment, no longer easily tensed from fear of falling behind. You do not preach. You do not try to convince. You just live, as if this life is a song that needs no climax, only truth. Raid. And then one day, maybe tomorrow, you are walking down a familiar street, seeing sunlight filter through the trees, hearing birds you cannot name, and suddenly your heart softens, not because of anything special, just because you are here, not in the role of a winner, not in the role of a seeker, just as yourself, nothing added. You will not tell anyone about that moment. You will not write it in a journal. You will not take a photo, because you know this is not something to capture. This is something to live. And that is enough. So, we will not end this video with a big truth. There are no 5 steps to awakening. No summary to memorize. No key takeaways. There is only a silence, a breath, an open door. And if you want, you can step through it, not in a rush, not needing to know what waits on the other side, only needing one thing, to be honest enough to stop playing if the game has begun to cost you yourself. End of verse. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. If something soft has settled in you, hold on to it like a little candle, not to light up the world, but just to keep yourself warm on the noisiest nights. And if one question is to remain after all this, perhaps it is, if you no longer needed to win, then how would you begin to live? You stop searching. You begin living from exactly where you stand, like stepping out of a long rain, soaked and chilled, and then suddenly noticing the sky has cleared. Not brightly, not in a rush, just a gentle light falling through the leaves, quietly touching everything, as if every little thing was being welcomed back again. That is the feeling when you have walked through the first 4 seasons of your life and arrived in your present. No more running, no more proving, no more analyzing. You begin to feel you can live without needing anything special to begin. To live, not for a goal, but for the life that is already flowing through you. One morning, you wake up, your eyes still heavy, sleep still foggy, but you are in no hurry. not because you are lazy, but because you are listening to your own rhythm. You no longer jump straight into the to-do list. You sit for a while, hear the fan, feel the dim light of early morning, and you know you are alive. Not for anyone, not to be seen, just to be here. You go out, meet others, still work, still talk, but you no longer rush to prove anything. You do not need people to like you. You do not need your words to sound clever. You do not need to leave the best impression. You only need to be fully present. Strangely enough, that presence makes you the most memorable. No longer the one who makes an impression. No longer the one who stands out. Just someone who brings others peace because you have stopped performing. You move through life lighter, not because everything is easy, but because you no longer carry the weight of needing to be someone. You realize a life can begin again, without a major event, without a life-changing trip, without a dramatic moment. It only takes one tiny instant. You feel enough. You do not need to clear all your past. You do not need to erase all your sadness. You do not need perfect healing. You just need to be here, with your heart exactly as it is. Someone who has been hurt can still live gently. Someone who has made mistakes can still move forward without retreating. Someone who may not seem special in any obvious way can still live a deeply meaningful life if they stop running away from themselves. Raid, and you begin to see your past does not need to be perfect. You do not need to always be strong. You just need to be honest with what is here right now. You stop trying to understand everything, because sometimes understanding does not make life any easier. You stop trying to forgive, because sometimes simply letting go allows forgiveness to arrive, like a soft breeze at the end of a long afternoon. You stop trying to love yourself, because you no longer hurt yourself through constant expectations. From that place, you begin to live, not by starting over, but by continuing from somewhere else, a place where light comes from within, when old things feel new again because you are no longer who you used to be. You still walk the same familiar streets. You still sit at the same old desk. You still hear the same hum of the washing machine, the traffic, the ticking of the clock. But something has shifted. It is not that the world has changed. It is you who has changed. You used to live each day as if it were just a stepping stone toward a more important day. You measured time by your achievements. You judged each moment based on how worthy it was. You were always rushing. But now, you no longer feel the need to get somewhere. You can stay with the small slices of the present. You wash the dishes, not as a dull task to get over with, but as a moment to feel the water, to notice warmth and coolness, to hear the sound of water as if it were a wordless melody. You clean your home, not because it needs to look good for others, but because each item, each corner, each patch of dust, they are part of the life that lives with you, and you want to listen to them. You make a cup of tea, not worrying about the exact temperature or steeping time. You simply want to be present in that moment, for the tea, for yourself, for the space around you. You talk to someone not to network, not to build a connection, but because that person deserves to be heard, and you want to be fully present with them. You work. You still have goals, but they no longer drag you like a leash. You work because you want to do something meaningful, because you feel you are contributing, because you choose it, not because you are forced. No more productivity or perish. No more you must stand out, you must advance. No more if you cannot do it, you do not matter. Only this: I live inside each thing I do. I do not lose myself just because I am doing something. And the strange thing is, you are no longer tense, but your work becomes better. You no longer strain yourself, but your communication flows more naturally. You no longer try hard to be kind, but others begin to trust you more. Because people do not see your effort, they feel the quality of your presence. And that quality cannot be faked. You start to see the biggest change is not that you are doing something new. It is that you are living the old things. As a new person, you still brush your teeth in the morning, but you are no longer rushing through it. You still get dressed for work, but you no longer feel like you are playing a role. You still eat lunch, go shopping, scroll through the internet, but you no longer feel pulled by a sense of something missing, because nothing feels missing inside you. You are no longer living from an empty cup. You are living from a cup that is full and letting it overflow naturally. Raid. That is the moment you realize simple presence is the greatest miracle. No book teaches you that. No test can measure whether you have achieved it. No one praises you for doing it quietly. But you feel it, and you no longer want to trade it away. Not for achievement, not for status, not for admiration. Because in the end, after all the long nights and short days, what stays with you is how you lived each moment. You do not need to stand out. And that, paradoxically, is what makes you unforgettable.